Good morning, everyone. All right. So welcome to the Spring Grand Ceremony, and thanks for having me here today. I'm Bruno Lucarelli, a believer with the South San Francisco Spiritual Hall. I was introduced to Konko Kyo by Kawahatsu Sensei back in 2017. Since then, I've been involved with technical work and organizing youth events and administration, and right now I live in North Texas. In spite of that location, thanks to advances in technology, I've been able to build a strong relationship with the San Francisco church here. So as a heads up before I start, I developed asthma over the winter after some bouts with COVID, so I might have to clear my throat every so often. It's a process, so thanks a lot for your patience. So let's lay some groundwork about Konko. Religion. When I said that word, what was your reaction? Maybe you were taken aback, maybe you were intrigued. Most likely, when I just said the word religion, you were a little bit on guard, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's the nature of, I think, how we see religion today in the United States. The underlying thought we have when someone brings up the topic of religion is, what am I going to have to do? And again, that's not wrong. Religions typically come with a set of expectations that we have to adhere to. Why is that? We can sum up the relationship between humans and the spiritual in most religions as a covenant. A covenant is a formal agreement between two parties. So if a formal agreement is the basis of your relationship, then time to time we're going to develop a transactional attitude about that. If we're doing well to meet the terms of our agreement, then we're going to feel better about ourselves. And if we're falling behind, we're going to feel bad about ourselves. So when I'm going to talk to you about religion, you might think about what I'm going to put on your shoulders. And I don't think you're suffering a failure of character for that. And I don't think you're missing something. I think it's just a response to the world that we live in. So let's turn our idea of religion on its head. What if instead of placing conditions on you in exchange for a certain outcome, a God wanted to involve itself in your life and help you? What if that God has no real concept of punishing you? And what if that God just wants to be involved in your life, to guide your journey into being a kinder and wiser person? What if that God wanted to be like a parent? That's an unusual idea, right? And I think when the founder of Konko Kyo described this type of relationship, it was unique in Japan as well. Over 150 years later, here in America, it still is a pretty unique idea. But it makes a lot of sense if we just look at what's in front of us. In Konko, we have a unique relationship with our God, Tenshi Kane no Kami. Kami is not an authority above humanity. Our relationship with Kami is similar to that between a parent and a child. One translation of Tenshi Kane no Kami is the principal parent, a being that chooses to nurture, protect, and guide us. Other translations are the divine parent, but parent is always a part of it. The Konko founder, Konko Daijin, is like an older sibling to humanity. Just as he did in life, he continues to act as a spiritual sibling to humanity, mediating between us and Kami. If we look at Konko as a parental relationship between Kami and humanity, we turn our normal concept of worship on its head. What do good parents ask of their children? Healthy families are built on unconditional love, trust, and firm guidance. There's no contract, and if you fall behind, that just means that Kami wants to help you more. And the deal, I guess, is that Kami gets to participate in our lives, and we get to become people who can make the most out of our lives. That's a relationship of mutual interdependence, which is something that we call Aiokakeo in Konko. As Kami once told the founder in The Divine Call, Kami exists because of people, and people exist because of Kami. Everyone will be forever prosperous through the relationship of mutual reliance between Kami and people. So now we know a little bit more about Konko. For some people, it might have been a bit of an introduction, for others, a review. But that's a setup for today's theme, which is sacrifice. Specifically, what we mean by sacrifice in Konko. Now, I think sacrifice is another one of those kind of intimidating words. Like the idea of religion, it can imply that you're going to do something for a certain outcome. And I think in the case of sacrifice, usually when we offer sacrifice, it's kind of something we don't want to do. And in most uses of the word, I think that's true. I think that's how it's used, especially in English today. But at its core, the word sacrifice really just means offering something in return for something else that's more important. For some people, they can interpret that as offering something and never getting something in return. And the really extreme cases, sacrifice can mean offering your life. And when I say offering your life in that context, I mean offering to die. And I promise you, if that was expected of me in Konko, I probably wouldn't have stuck around for 8 years. So in spite of that, though, we do very much have a concept of sacrifice, and it's prevalent throughout the entire, I guess you could say, the entire variety of Konko practice. And we go back to the analogy of a parent and a child. A parent sacrifices their time, energy, and resources to nurture and guide their child. A lot of our prayers, as you've seen today, are about thanking Kami for the sacrifice that Kami makes. What we sometimes forget is that a child sacrifices something too. A child ignores their instincts to follow their parent's guidance instead. If a child follows the guidance of a good parent, then they'll grow into a healthy, empathetic, and wise person. And if they don't, or they just don't have that guidance, they'll punish themselves by making unhealthy or harmful decisions. Anyone who's busted into that box of brownies in the kitchen as a kid and then thrown up knows exactly what I'm talking about. And on the other hand, as adults, we can be pretty thankful that our parents made us go to school and eat our vegetables, usually. So by using this metaphor of Kami as a parent and humans as the child, and Konko Kyo as a family, Konko is characterized by sacrifice. The teachings that the founder gives us to guide our lives, they aren't easy to live by, but anyone can do it. We just have to start by sacrificing some of our choices. We trust that by being humble and gentle today, we'll become wiser and kinder tomorrow. Because to sacrifice in Konko means to grow. I'll go into a small personal example of this sacrifice, and then we'll work towards bigger ones. And then we'll close by talking about what you can do to start this process or continue it. So I live in North Texas right now, and it's an incredibly diverse region. Over the last 2 years, I've been blessed with wonderful friends from a lot of backgrounds, and I've had some amazing personal development as a result. You hear that, and you might think that, when we think about okage or blessings in Konko, that Kami just guided people to me who would click. And I promise you, and in fact, some of my friends are watching the stream now, they will tell you that that's not how any of it started. So each person I'm friends with is a very different individual from me. My friends range from plenty of ethnic backgrounds. I originally listed them on the sermon, then I realized it took up like half a paragraph, so I'm just going to say the word plenty. They're men and women in about equal amounts, and most of them would be considered somewhere in the queer spectrum. So with all of that in mind, look at me. Right. So coming from who I am and what I am, and then getting to know people, the process of getting to know each person, it's not easy. And I don't mean when I say getting to know somebody, I don't mean small talk, seeing them day to day. I mean really getting to know them as individuals and the lives that they lead. It's not an easy process. It's hard to get to know anybody, especially when they're different from you. And each person, just with their temperament and their own experiences, they yield their own set of challenges. And my friends would definitely say the same about me. So as I began this process and I started to make mistakes and cause problems for myself and for others, I looked to the Konko founder and to Kami for an answer. The Konko founder teaches us to accept our limits and to trust in Kami to guide us. There's one teaching in particular, and it's very specific, and it stuck out to me when I started to stumble and get to know people who are really different from me. The founder once told someone, "Those who practice faith should crawl between the legs of 10 people rather than going over the shoulders of one." So, using this teaching and applying it to my life, I slowly changed my behavior. First, I started to observe rather than to force situations. Then I looked at supporting people rather than demanding things of them. I decided to try listening more than speaking at people. I didn't set up a plan and expect a certain result, right? And I think that's something that with secular modes of counseling, we try to do. I think that the best counselors that I've worked with, though, they tend to understand that the process of growth is its own reward. And so I trusted in my own process that by living the teachings, I would receive blessings. And those blessings came, but they were from my own heart. I'm still working on it, but the results are there so far. And that's just one example of how Konko works. We aren't asked to turn our lives upside down. We're encouraged to make these small, consistent choices in our daily lives that stick with us. The founder has described this process as climbing a mountain in our own hearts. So with that, I'll move up to some bigger examples, a little bit of history, a little bit of Konko culture. We'll talk about the founder, Konko Daijin or Bunjiro Azukawa. The founder of Konkokyo was originally a farmer who was saved from a life-or-death illness by Kami. Eventually, as he built this relationship of trust with Kami, Kami asked him to accept a responsibility, and that responsibility is what we call the divine call. The responsibilities that Kami asked of the founder in the divine call can be summed up as follows. The first one is to always trust in Kami's guidance. The second one, which we're all here today because of this one, he was asked to dedicate his life to helping Kami help people with their problems. After accepting Kami's request and the divine call, you'd think the founder just had it easy, but he didn't. He faced a lot of challenges. After he began to offer spiritual counseling to people, the founder lost a lot of his family still to illness. He was robbed, he was assaulted, and he was even persecuted by the imperial government. He didn't retaliate. He never wished any of these people badly. That's because he trusted Kami, and Kami told the founder that fighting was a waste of time. Despite everything he went through, the founder trusted Kami wholeheartedly, no matter what. He accepted every one of these obstacles as an opportunity to develop his faith and take a new lesson away each time. And that's what sacrifice means in Konko. The founder offered his life to Kami, not his death, but the entire way he lived his life. And to offer your life, that's to offer every choice, and it takes determination to accept every challenge and every tragedy as an opportunity to grow. It takes godly patience to do that for days upon years. And people who met the founder always remarked on how sincere he was. The founder grew into that sincere person that they met by offering his choices to Kami. Through sacrifice, the founder accepted Kami's guidance to become that amazing person who started Konko. And with the founder's sacrifice in mind, we still have people who live by the founder's example. These are the ministers. And what do the ministers do? Do they exercise power and authority? No, they don't. It's actually one of the few rules that we have in Konko is it's pretty frowned upon for them to put pressure on people using their position, and that's a unique role that they serve as a minister. If one of the senseis here asks me to do something and I do it, it's because we're friends and we have that trust, and they know as individuals that they can ask me that. But before I got to know them to that point, they were actually kind of hesitant to ask me to do stuff. And again, that's as individuals, right? As ministers, they serve Kami. Are the ministers, are they restricted from marrying, having children, having a drink? No issues there. A lot of people here are actually descended from ministers. So what distinguishes Konko ministers from the believers? A Konko minister's role is to sacrifice the way they live their lives. As a believer, for instance, I can pick and choose. I can make mistakes, and I'm only really accountable to the people in my lives. Well, people in my life. But becoming a minister means centering your entire life around Kami. Because of this, a minister will sacrifice whatever other path that they might have chosen at first. The minister, they share the same responsibilities as the founder. One is to trust in Kami completely, and two is to help Kami help people. Many Konko ministers do have families, but like the founder, if someone calls or comes to their church for spiritual counseling, they still do their best to respond. A minister does everything in their power every day to help Kami help people. In more extreme cases that do happen, the ministers can be asked to go to the other side of the world to take over churches that need them. Sometimes a minister might take over a church near them, but again, sometimes a minister will go from Japan to America or from Japan to Brazil. And that's a call that they answer. To pick on one minister whose story I know really well, Kawahatsu Sensei has been an American citizen for a lot longer than he was a Japanese one. Kawahatsu Sensei left his entire life behind in Japan to serve Kami, and Kami guided him to become an amazing person who leads this rich life that he has. It's thanks to offering that sacrifice that I'm here today and I got involved with Konko. And I think a number of other people could say that. So we see that the Konko ministers devote their lives to serving Kami today in their own way. It would be easy to say that they follow in the founder's footsteps, but I like to think of them as picking up where the founder left off. The founder's teachings are written down, but the founder is no longer with us in life, but in spirit. The ministers, being living people, are in a unique place because they can continue the founder's path over 150 years after he began. Generations of ministers have turned their lives to Kami, and it's because of them that we're here speaking today. So just like the founder, the ministers can show us by example what sorts of people we can become. It's through their sacrifice that they can polish their hearts and build their sincerity. That sincerity shines through and helps us understand what Kami wants for humanity. And because we have a place and people to learn that understanding from, we can walk the same path and learn to trust Kami in our own ways. So, with a little bit of history in mind, with the ministers in mind, what can each of us do? I think that the default state is the path of least resistance, and that's always available. It's really easy for us to stay within our comfort zones. We don't have to look inside of ourselves, and we can keep repeating the same mistakes. That's a decision as well, and to some extent, I think we all choose that from time to time. But to grow as a person requires sacrifice. Everyone does this at some point in their lives, with no exceptions. People who train their bodies offer their stamina and their effort to become physically stronger. People who go to school and offer their focus and time to learn new skills, they train their mind, and that's what they get. They sacrifice these things to build their brain. Training the mind and the body are essential. Training the spirit, though, that's another matter, and it seems like humans don't have a single answer for that. And that's okay. If you want to train your spirit, though, Konko is an answer that does make it simple to do so. You can see the results from Konko not only in the next life, but really in this life. I'm not asking everyone here to become a minister, and that's because it's a very personal decision. As the founder once said, everyone trusts in Kami, but Kami trusts few. But to be a Konko believer, it's simple. It's what you make of it. There's not a formal commitment. Technically, our churches don't have a concept of formal membership. It's more like, think about it like a contract-free gym where you can come to train anytime. Sometimes you stick to your routine, sometimes you don't, and that's okay. Everything you work on is your own decision, just like you choose which exercise to do. So you can try starting with something small. There's this booklet called The Voice of the Universe. Think of it as a set of highlights with some easy-to-understand teachings. You can read through and pick one that you think might be relevant to you. You can try it out in your daily life. Now, when you try it out, you don't do it once. You do it multiple times, and you build a habit. It's like building muscles. You'll see the progress over time, and just like building muscles, it tends to stick. And if you're stuck and you need a hand, that's what the ministers are here for. And that's why we have a community. So to close, we always have to sacrifice something when trusting a teaching. Usually that sacrifice is accepting our own flaws. When we offer our humility to Kami and trust in the founder's example, we always make progress. Maybe not day by day, but season to season and year to year. And with that, I just want to thank you again for coming today, and I wish you all the best in your own journeys. Thank you.